This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is the show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love. And as a reminder, I'm here to help you understand your dreams. So if you have a dream that's got you stumped, send it to me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com. I can help you interpret your dream or answer any general questions you may have about dreams. So email me at debbie@dreampowerradio.com. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This morning, as I got ready to prepare for this episode, a friend wished me well and promised me a glass of wine after I'd finished my recording. That's ironic, given the topic we're discussing today, alcoholism. My guest, Lisa Boucher, knows firsthand about the devastating effects this disease can have on you. She's the author of the award-winning book, Raising the Bottom, Making Mindful Choices in a Drinking Culture, and she has assisted hundreds of people in their healing from substance abuse. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Lisa.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm happy to be here.
So tell me, Lisa, is there anything wrong with my having a glass of wine this evening?
There is not a thing wrong with it, Debbie. It's when that glass of wine becomes a habit. That habit can then turn into something more of a need, and when that need turns into a compulsive addiction. So if you're someone who can just have a glass of wine a night, you're probably fine and enjoy it. But if you find that you're someone who you started with one glass of wine and in 6 months you're having 3 glasses of wine a night, there's where you need to put on the brakes, because what you're doing is there's a progression there. And that's a symptom of perhaps losing control, and you can just slide on into an alcohol addiction. And it may take years and months or whatever, but eventually you get to a point where it's very hard to control. And so anytime I tell people, if you have to control your drinking, it's already out of control.
Well, I can tell you one negative benefit of drinking. And that's that too much alcohol depresses the REM cycle of sleep. And what that means is that it depresses our ability to dream. So that's definitely one good reason why not to get onto that slippery slope of excessive drinking. But getting onto the subject of drinking being a slippery slope, you yourself are a recovering alcoholic. What caused you to drink uncontrollably?
Well, Debbie, now here's where my book and everything is based on the premise of you do not have to hit these horribly low bottoms. Well, I did not hit a low bottom. And I grew up with an alcoholic mother who did hit a very low bottom. So I saw a montage of insanity and really the stereotypical picture of what people would expect an alcoholic to be, where my mother, who was a registered nurse, also I am as well, and she went from being, highly functional and drinking socially and having card club and whatnot to literally being passed out in the garden, under the dining room table, crashing numerous cars. The stories go on, and a lot of them are in my book, and some of them are pretty funny and some of them are pretty sad. So when I finally started to, I think when we start to get into trouble with alcohol, we have these little conversations that are going on in our minds. So we internally know when we're drinking too much. And I was starting to have those conversations, or I would survey the bar or my friend group and say, hey, do y'all think I'm drinking a little too much? And of course you get a whole chorus of unequivocal no's because they're drinking along with you. but it's almost like I was looking for that validation, knowing something wasn't resonating within myself, that it was getting out of hand. But I wanted that approval. I wanted that someone to co-sign, I say, on our blank BS checks to keep on going. And so I was not a daily drinker when I quit drinking. I did not ever have a DUI. I did not have any car accidents. I didn't have any consequences. But I quit drinking because my consequences were all internal. It was this spiritual bankruptcy. It was an inability to find any peace. It was that feeling of restlessness. I know the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about the three things. Are you restless, irritable, and discontent? And I can say, yes, I was all of those things all of the time. And I had every reason to be content. I was, like I said, in my late 20s, so I didn't have my children yet. I was married to a professional. I was working, he was working, and we're living our life. So there was nothing wrong. And yet I was just always looking for something else. It was like that hole in the soul that we talk about, that you're just trying to fill this hole in the soul. And so a lot of people will turn to drugs, alcohol, sex, food, shopping, anything to try to fill it up, when really it's a spiritual bankruptcy that needs to be filled. So my mother, by the time I'm starting to question my drinking, she's 7 years sober, finally. And I'm seeing her morph from this wreck of a person to this amazing woman. And I just decided that drinking wasn't making my life better. It wasn't doing anything good for me to be the party girl. And I guess I was blessed that I was able to play the tape forward, we call it, and look down the road. And I'm like, where is this really taking me? How is it helping my life? So I decided it was time to stop. I was having a hard time getting through college. I'd been in and out of different colleges over a decade. I mean, things like that is how my disease was manifesting. And I just really, something inside of me just said, I don't want to live like this. I know there's a better way. I saw my mom change, and I just thought, before it gets really bad, before I am a daily drinker, I'm going to stop. And so I did, and I got into a 12-step program.
I was going to say, how were you able to stop?
Well, I go to AA, and I go to, I still do 3 meetings a week. I've been sober 30 years, and I go because I need to be there for the people that were there for me. I think the 12 steps are magical because it's really about, people tend to drink because of emotional wounds that are unhealed. A lot of it is from childhood. I know there are a lot of people, in the many women in particular that I work with, and there are some men. I don't work particularly with men, but I talk to a lot of men, addicts and alcoholics. And for so many of us, there were childhood wounds. There were anger and resentment from people, grudges that people will hang on that happened back in childhood, and you're 45 years old and you're still carrying that knapsack around. And so these are the things that are fueling people's drinking. Or trauma. They say, like I alluded to, trauma is huge, childhood trauma. Other reasons are the genetic predisposition. I do know people that have had magical childhoods and wonderful parents, and they found themselves in trouble anyway. So there are a plethora of reasons why people end up in alcoholism. But I would say overwhelmingly 80% would be a safe guesstimate that people have had some wound that is unhealed, or they get into, let's say, you see this kind of pattern a lot. Someone will have a difficult childhood, or maybe this child felt unloved by her father, or the father abandoned the family, or the mother abandoned the family. These feelings of low self-worth you just can't recoup that when a child has been abandoned by a parent, and they carry these wounds for their lifetime unless they really have the courage to get into therapy and delve into it. But so many don't even realize that's what's behind. And so then maybe they're driven to relationships that are with emotionally unavailable people. And so they're almost recreating this pattern of what happened to them subconsciously. And so now they're in these desperately unhappy relationships or marriages. And so then maybe the drinking becomes a way of coping. And that's what happens with so many. There are a million different scenarios. I could sit here and talk all day about it of why, but that is what happens. So people are self-medicating their unhealed wounds as opposed to just dealing with them and learning healthy coping skills. But I had to learn ways to cope in a healthy way. I was not taught that at home because my mother was incapable of teaching it. My father was rather angry and abusive. And so I didn't have anyone saying anything about, oh, how do you feel? Well, how are you going to handle that feeling? Why don't you try this? It just wasn't that kind of environment. So at a very young age, at 12 years old, I started drinking a beer here and there. And you realize, oh, I feel kind of good. I don't feel as scared anymore or angry or whatever the case may be, whatever feeling you're trying to self-medicate, you realize that these substances, they kind of work for a short time. And then you need more and more of the substances to get the same relief. And pretty soon you're in full-blown addiction.
Well, how does that jive with a quote of yours? And I'll quote it, where you say, "Women tell me they drink because they have problems. The truth is that they have problems because they drink." It seems that to me, it seems like both might be true, but you're saying no?
Well, I'm saying a lot of even everything that I talked about, those are problems, but adding alcohol to it fuels it. So, and in people that don't maybe have a lot of emotional, yes, alcohol causes, I can't tell you how many times when I was raising my sons, the neighborhood, I was sober at the time. I was probably one of these, we hung around, there was a group of us, we were like 5 couples. There was so much alcohol. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of bad behavior. There were, you hear all the time in friend groups, who's having an affair, a lot of these things that happen in life happen because of the alcohol. If the alcohol wasn't there, probably that affair would have never happened. Probably that shopping spree that now you're hiding from your significant other might have not happened. All of these things that we do, these addictive behaviors, they cause a lot of problems and heartache. They cause problems with children where parents, I know I've had kids say to me when I was working with children in the hospital, my mother can't handle anything. So when you've got children saying this, why can't this mother handle anything? Well, I was thinking to myself, she's probably in her addiction and her life is all about getting the next drink, going with her girlfriends, that kind of thing. So it creates a lot of familial problems when the parents are still kind of locked in adolescence mindset themselves, where they can't really get out of themselves to parent appropriately. It causes huge damage. We see divorce situations that are made 10 times worse by one parent bad-mouthing the other, by kids being pulled apart like rubber bands because the parents are both drinking and going out and fueling their madness. I mean, we have to remember when people consume alcohol, it shuts down prefrontal cortex. This is our computer. This is our rational part of our brain that allows us to behave like sane adults, to make good choices. So when you're drinking, even if it's just a few drinks, it's acting on that part of your brain. And so it does explain why our prisons are full of people that did things while they were under the influence. It explains how you can open the paper and see, oh my God, the judge is just got a DUI. The judge is making the law. Well, you know what? Because he's not thinking clearly when he sat at the bar after he got done listening to cases all day and stayed there too late and drank too much and thinks he's fine. And so we read, I'm sure every city across the country has something like that. So you see a lot of that. It's these poor decisions that we make when we're under the influence. So yes, it creates a lot of problems. And I know with people who get into recovery, in a few short months, they are amazed without doing a whole lot other than taking away the alcohol, trying to work on themselves a little bit, how much more peaceful their life is because they're not creating drama anymore. And I know when I got sober, I think I was as addicted to the drama and chaos of that alcohol, fun, party life as I was the booze itself. So that was an adjustment to get used to life being calm, to not having all this chaos and craziness going on. And eventually you get to where, oh my God, I love my peace and serenity. How could have I ever not wanted this? But so that's how it happens.
Good. I want to talk to you more about life after you quit drinking. We're going to take a short break here. We are speaking with author Lisa Boucher about alcoholism on Dream Power Radio, and we'll be right back. What do Thomas Jefferson, Elias Howe, and Paul McCartney have in common? They all understood the value of dreams, and as a result, the ideas, inventions, and creations from their dreams affect us to this day. What great ideas are you leaving on your pillow at night? Sign up for a complimentary consultation at my website, thedreamcoach.net, and discover why your dreams are a terrible thing to waste.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, and welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach, and we're talking with Lisa Boucher about alcoholism. And Lisa, your book contains many stories of women who fell into alcoholism. Could you tell the story of one person and how she was able to quit drinking and get on the road to recovery?
Yes. Okay, so the 10 stories in the back of the book were women that were all highly functioning. So I'll start with the first one. It was Caro. Caro is a surgeon. She, excuse me. She was going to work every day, coming home and pouring a glass of wine, like so many women do, and they don't see anything wrong with this. But what was happening on the backside is she would open this bottle of wine, drink the whole thing while she's cooking dinner. She had 2 children, and they were very distressed over this drinking. There is a letter in the book from Lucy. She's 16, was 16 years old at the time, of how she felt about this. So here is a mother that feels like she's doing everything great. Her kids are well provided for. She's going to work. She's performing surgeries, and she's coming home. And so what? She has a few glasses of wine. That was her mindset, as that is so many women's mindsets. But again, so in her story, she talks about how it began to escalate, where that bottle of wine turned into 2 to 3 till she's drinking till she's pretty much passing out every night. And so nothing bad happened to her either. She just knew she was playing with fire and it was becoming such a habit that was so entrenched. Her children were unhappy. And so she went back to the hospital. She came home, did what she always did, had some wine, decided, I'm going to tell my partners. She goes back to the hospital and tells her partners, hey, I think I'm an alcoholic. And their reaction was so typical of doctors. They said to her, surely you're not serious. So healthcare needs a complete overhaul. I can tell you it's really bad. The attitudes within healthcare, people think they're going to get help when they go to the hospital. No, you won't. Not for alcoholism. What they will do is they will throw antidepressants or antipsychotics your way, as they did with my mother, and it caused her addiction to go on for 25 years. So thank goodness, Carol, being a surgeon, she had some wherewithal that she did not want to go this pill route. And she just pretty much told her partners that she was going to check herself into rehab, and that's what she did. Because as a physician, once you acknowledge you have this drinking problem, you pretty much have no other choice but to go to rehab. Or the medical board, and especially here in Ohio, they're very strict. They could take your license. So she checked herself into rehab, and then when she came out of rehab, she started going to 12-step meetings as well. So her story, it's not overly dramatic with all these, again, these stereotypical that people think you have to be this bad person or the one person on the 6 o'clock news. No, it really is the person, the functional. 80% of alcoholics are functional and have jobs. They have families. So these are the people that I wanted to reach and I wanted to talk about. So all of the stories in the book, some are a little more dramatic than Caro's, but her story, you've got to read it because she gets into like the feelings behind it. And she gets into like, she felt like she was always competing with her mother for her father's affection. And whether this was real or perceived, this was her reality. So as a child, there was that feeling. And there was a line where she talks about being in college, or maybe she was in medical school at the time. This woman is so bright. She had a PhD and then went to medical school. So she's like overly educated. And some of that was even trying to people please and get her dad's approval and all of these things, even though he loved her unconditionally. So all of these things play into addiction, can play into it. Very complicated. Nobody has the same story. Nobody drinks or uses for the same reason. It's as individual as our fingerprints, but once someone segues into addiction, the feelings tend to be so similar. And that's why I think 12 steps and those meetings and whatnot are amazing, because you can have people from completely different walks of life. But when they start talking about feeling less than, feeling that they were never as good as, feeling inadequate because of whatever, everybody seems to be able to relate to those very common feelings that people in addiction seem to have.
When you yourself took your experience and then went to work to help other people, especially other women, to help them to quit drinking, how do you help them? What sort of methods do you use?
Well, for like women, or you say like when people come to me and ask for help, I take them through the same process that helped me. And so I do encourage, and there are some people that are just not ready to quit drinking. I know since my book came out, a lot of women contact me on social media, and there are many that I've talked to for the last year, maybe even 2, where they're still in that contemplative stage. They know they need to quit drinking, but they are just reluctant for any number of reasons to pull the trigger. And so I continue to be available to them, and I continue to share my experience and continue to, most of the time, once you say, hey, I think I'm an alcoholic, or I think I have a drinking problem and I really need to quit drinking, you kind of ruin your drinking. It's kind of hard to drink with impunity then and ignore it. It's always like gnawing at the back of your mind. I know for myself, I knew 2 years before I was ready to actually do something about it that I was drinking too much. Like I said earlier, I'm having these conversations in my head. I'm surveying the room. So I knew I needed to quit, but I was nowhere near ready to quit. And so all I can do is encourage someone to consider the maybe, to rethink the drink, to really look at, here's the question. What is it doing good for you in your life? Is it making your relationships better? Is it making your health better? And usually 100% of the time, the answer is no to both of those questions. Relationships are never with alcohol added, or health. Alcohol is a class 1 carcinogen. So people don't realize it's in the same class 1 as asbestos. So it absolutely causes cancer. So even if you're not an alcoholic, it pays to rethink the drink and say, my God, why am I guzzling this poison that is going to cause cancer? And all you have to do is look around at all of the men with throat cancer, all the women with breast cancer, the colon cancers. It causes 7 different kinds, pancreatic, liver cancer. So why are we not talking more about this? Just even from a health perspective, forget about it. Maybe you're just someone who does enjoy your wine, but you might want to think about it. If you realize that, okay, this does cause cancer, do you really want to drink 4 glasses every day? That's a lot of poison to ingest. And then down the road, I know the nursing homes, as a nurse, a lot of people that were heavy drinkers, maybe they were alcoholic, maybe they weren't, I don't know, but the nursing homes are full of people with alcohol dementia. So there's just many reasons to be careful about benzo use. That would be your Valium, Ativan, Xanax. These drugs make people's brain mush. When they were on them 25 years, they have a hard time getting off of them. I think the pharmaceutical company designs most of their meds so that people, once they get on them, they have horrible withdrawal when they try to get off. They do that with some antidepressants. They do that with antipsychotics. And so these people are like lifelong customers. Well, when you start taking drugs or you're drinking and you start in your teens or your 20s, what do you think your brain is going to be by the time you're 65? And so we see it in the nursing homes. Many people, I see people come to the hospital that they're in their late 50s and their minds are not that good anymore from drug, alcohol abuse, or maybe just being a heavy drinker. So I think we need to have these sorts of conversations so people can at least make informed decisions. And a lot of it is our culture too, Debbie. I mean, the push to drink is truly ridiculous. Here's some real-time info. There's a barbecue place here in our hometown, Flyby Barbecue. I'm going to call them out. They're advertising like crazy these drink pouches that look like the little Capri Sun juice boxes that kids drink. And their whole claim to fame with these adult juice boxes is that they're doubles. So there's only one reason why anybody, and I know when I was drinking, I drank a double to get drunk faster. I did not drink a double because I liked the taste of bourbon. I drank a double because I wanted the effect of 2 bourbons. So why are people flock to this kind of nonsense and they think it's hysterical, but actually it's not funny. A barbecue place mostly is a family place. So you're taking your children to go have barbecue and the parents are going to drink doubles and then get in the car and drive the kids home? What kind of example does this set? What kind of a business promotes the degradation of the family through alcohol abuse, possibly drunk driving, possibly an accident on the way home? It's insanity. But to speak out against it, oh, you're no fun. Well, you know what? I will take that mantle and I'll wear it proudly. Then I'm no fun because I think it's just insanity what's going on. There's yogurt cups now with yogurt in them. There's ice cream. There's a creamery in, I think it is Ohio, and that they wanted to add alcohol to it. It's like, why do we need to have alcohol in absolutely everything? And children are going to get a hold of this. It's just insanity.
Of course. And to your point, you go to any bar and what you have in the afternoons, happy hour.
Yeah, it's nonstop. And you really think about it. And here's what I want people to know. And I hope if you don't get anything else, hear this. Out of the hundreds of people that I've worked with and the hundreds of thousands of people that I've talked to over 30 years of recovery, people, myself included, I got sober, like I said, in my late 20s. It was a hard time accepting that I basically squandered a whole decade of, bar hopping, drinking, having fun. And it was fun. I'm not going to lie. It was fun. But when people wait and don't get sober till their 40s, 50s, 60s, it is even harder for them to come to terms with the years that they wasted, with the moments they missed with their families of not being present, always being, there's a selfishness about drinking. It's all about, well, I need my wine and I'm going to get my wine. So you don't really care what's going on on any sort of deep level. There's another woman in the book who is also a physician, and her daughter was going through something, and she talks about, my daughter's on the couch crying in a ball because of a breakup with a boyfriend. The kid was like 15 at the time, and she said, I'm looking at her like, was oblivious to the fact she even had a boyfriend. Because the mom would go to work and then come home and make dinner maybe, and then go to a wine tasting or whatever. So that was her life. Her life was all about her.
We're just about out of time, so I just want to ask you very quickly how people can find out about your book and about you.
My book is available where books are sold. Raisingthebottom.com is my website. I'm on Twitter, Boucher author. But again, Amazon, iTunes, it's also on Audible. So wherever books are sold, and if you like to buy from your little independent bookstore, walk in there, they can order it if it's not there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa, for taking the time to speak with us today. We've been speaking with author and alcoholism expert, Lisa Boucher. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Until next time, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.